Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of My EdTech Life. Thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful Wednesday, or it may be well into Thursday, depending on where it is that you may be joining us from. But as always, thank you for all of your support. We appreciate all the likes, the shares, the follows, and thank you to all our new YouTube subscribers. We really appreciate you helping us on our mission to get to 1,000 subscribers. So definitely appreciate all the new subscribers and, of course, just all the new followers. We really appreciate that you are finding some value in our conversations. As you know, we do what we do for you so we can bring you some outstanding guests and outstanding conversations that really encompass a wide variety of the education space. And today is definitely going to be a great conversation, as I am excited to welcome Mr. Ted Dinsmore to the show. Ted, how are you this evening?
Awesome, Fonz. Very good. Very good. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you so much, Ted. And again, I ahead of time, and here in the show, I know that this show was scheduled for last Monday, but of course, due to a family emergency on my part, we rescheduled for today. So I thank you for being very flexible. And again, I am really excited and looking forward to today's conversation. So for all our audience members that are joining us today, and those that will even catch this on the replay, so Ted, if you can give us a little brief introduction about yourself, your journey. I always love to start with kind of that superhero origin story so we can make that connection with our audience, and then we'll dive right into reading XR.
Thanks so much, Fonz. Yeah, I really appreciate having me on this. This is a great opportunity for us to explain to people in the education world what we've been doing. So I've done a number of things over the past, 30 years, long time in my career. I've had a number of product companies, number of software companies, always been in the software business and developing applications really with the mission to help people. A lot of the foundations, what we've been doing, my company name is SphereGen, is actually making technology relevant, which is a great tagline, but it's so true. We've done some amazing things like remote surgery between Uganda and Mount Sinai, New York. We've done so many great things with the technology we've developed. So I'll tell you a little bit about where ReadingXR came from. We mainly have been in the healthcare space. I'm based here in New Haven, Connecticut, stone's throw from Yale here. And what happened was we were developing. You don't have glasses or contacts, Fonz, do you?
No, I don't. Not yet.
Not yet. So we were developing using the augmented reality headsets, trying to develop how you could go into an optometrist or a CVS or something and put them on and get your prescription, right? And that's where our work was for about 4 years. Out of that work, we weren't successful, honestly. And you learn a lot in your failures, right? What happened was one night, one of the doctors said, Dr. Andrews was working with us, he said, we had this device back in the 80s, and it was really useful for helping us understand how a child reads. And we're like, okay, tell us about this. And he said, yeah. He actually found one back in his closet. It hadn't been made in 20 years. It was called a Visograph. And what a Visograph did was it was basically a safety glass, plastic safety glasses we use in shop glasses, and it had eye scanning board on top of it. And they used it for years to have a child read and then figure out what happened with their eyes and what they were doing with their reading. And it's been defunct for a long time. So we started scratching around with it and figuring out, how can we do this? How can we do it? And it took a little time, but everything that we learned in our process in understanding how the eyes worked for the prescription, we applied to reading. So that's where this came from. It's been a lot of fun.
That is great, and again, this is really interesting because I know, Ted, we were talking a little bit, pre-chatting, you're talking about how you're definitely working more with medical industry but now, coming into education, definitely a different space. So I want to ask you a little bit about that journey too, as well, because like I said, I love to cover the whole story and just so our audience members really get to know what it is that your mission and your vision and your passion is. So how did that transition come about, and maybe what is it that you've seen in the education space that is very different from the space that you've been before, that, maybe you found a little bit of hurdles here and there, and how you've overcome that?
Yeah, and my journey in the education started when I was asked to be a visiting professor at St. George University in the Caribbean. It's a medical school. It's one of the largest medical schools in the United States medical system. And I had to go down it was really horrible. It was an island of Grenada off of Venezuela. I had to go down every semester and teach the teachers, the professors, about mixed reality, augmented, virtual, or mixed reality. And it was fascinating because here I am teaching, 70 and 80-year-olds who are brilliant doctors and brilliant professors. And over the 5 years I worked with them, I taught 180 professors. I taught 0 kids. Didn't have to. We graduated over 10,000 kids in that time frame. You just gave them the technology and got them to use it, and they just went. It was just such an eye-opening to me. I'm like, here we have med students that you just give them technology and they can go. Wow, okay. We started working more and more and in partnership with Microsoft, and because Microsoft produced the hardware, the HoloLens, and worked with us extensively to modify the HoloLens to do what we wanted it to do, which was be a tool for all teachers. And partnership with T-Mobile was a big supporter of ours, and the Barbara Bush Foundation. We really found a good partnership with them. They focus on adult literacy primarily. And now, most recently, Dollar General has come on as a partner with us as well in this journey. So it's been really fascinating to work with all these different organizations and bring together for the good of a good product, but also for the betterment of society, to help in education, So that's my journey. I do sit on 2 boards of universities here in New Haven. It's advisory boards. And it's been really amazing to see how hard teachers work and how much they have to do. And I think you've covered it well in a number of your broadcasts. If we can provide these basic tools to help them, why not?
Yeah, no, no, no. And you're absolutely right. And I think, at least in my role as an instructional tech, I know that one of the things that we often see is, again, just that little fear of tech, just because it's something new. Obviously, it's like, okay, I have to learn a new platform and so on. So I guess with your experience, like you said, going out and teaching, physicians, and not working with students, and now, creating this product for students, what have you seen? Is it, still kind of that fear? Are you seeing more, educators feeling a little bit more comfortable with the tech? And I'm sure that once they see the results, they're like, wow, this is amazing. And so, and I just want to ask that because I know that that's one of the biggest things that I see. And sometimes, you can get discouraged, but it's all a matter of getting to know how the teachers feel and speaking to them. So what have been your experiences with that, now putting it in, or putting your product, Reading XR, into that space with educators?
It's been amazing. And I got to say, the teachers that we've worked with, I mean, they're amazing because they're dealing with kids and they're doing everything they're doing in the day. And our technology is, well, it's not exactly out of the box, click on a website and go, right? You're using augmented reality headset. You're talking about eye tracking. You're talking about, what does the data mean? But the fundamental thing that we keep learning from teachers is they kind of know what's going on with a kid, right? Or a student, or most of them already know, but they can't articulate it to a parent, or they can't explain it to an administrator or someone else involved in the education system. So they really, it validates. There's a number of times where we've worked with it, and all of a sudden, teachers, yeah, I knew that kid was that, or that adult reader was that, but I couldn't prove it. And this gives them a really easy way for them, because you do a lot of testing and reading, tons of reading tests, particularly first through third. And this gives them an easy way to do it. And they can actually to work with a child or any adult, any learner, and be able to understand it and be able to articulate to both the student, the parent, and sometimes doctors. I think, our tagline for this product has been, we provide information for parents teachers, doctors, and students to understand what's going on with the reading of a child. We're not here to say, here, you need to do this type of reading strategy, this type of get glasses. We're here to provide information for the people that know what's going on to make their best judgments,
Yeah. And, I think that is so important, Ted. I mean, in the 17 years that I've been in education and even remembering, grade school myself, it was every year you have one test that the nurse pulls you out and they pull you out by grade level. And it's okay. Let's see the eye test and let's see the scoliosis and let's see this. But then, like you mentioned, there are some students that may need additional supports as well as adults. But, I'm just giving you my experience as a student. And from what I see and what I've seen from friends of mine in grade school, and then what I've seen, I guess, from that, overarching view that I get to have now, many times it's the students get pulled out and like you mentioned, they're working on strategies, kind of like a coping mechanisms, things that they just to get them by. But really, sometimes I feel that you're not getting to the root or finding, where the issue may really be, whether it could be a medical issue or is it something else that's going on, and the information may not all be there. So from what I'm hearing, and I got really excited right now when you shared this, because obviously, like you said, it's not just for our young learners, but it works for adults too, as well, is that you're getting actual data that tells you exactly what the root may be, so you can assess correctly and not just assume that the student just needs, the reading strategy. And, of course, the student may not be doing well because they're not following their reading strategy. So give them an overlay now. Oh, it's not working with an overlay. Okay, let's work on this other device or things of that sort. And now it just becomes kind of like you're jumping from one thing to another without really assessing the root. And I find that so important. And that's why I'm really intrigued about what it is that you are offering. And so right now, is this just limited to some schools? What is the plan for Reading XR as you are continuing to grow and getting into the education space?
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a journey. As I said, when we started out with Microsoft, we had T-Mobile and Barbara Bush Foundation. We've spent a couple years, and one of the big things we learned was we had to make it easy for the teachers to do, right? To do that assessment quickly. A lot of times, depending upon the standard, they can take 60 to 90 minutes to do a reading assessment, right? To do a proper reading assessment, and we're able to do the reading assessment 3 times in 15 minutes, right? Which is, phenomenal. And the reason we say 3 times is because the first time the student or the child is excited about it and they go through it kind of quick. And even though you tell them at the end, you have to answer 10 questions because there's an objective part of this, they forget, right? Human nature. I'm excited at something new. Oh, wait a minute, I got to answer questions at the end? Hang on. So then the second time, they're kind of hyper-focalized on, I got to answer questions, right? So they go very slow in the reading. And then the third time is where we get really accurate reading, is the feedback we're getting from all the people testing it. So right now we're in the process. We're about 17 to 18 sites right now, locations, but we are commercially available now, and we are available for anybody to buy it and all that stuff. So it is rolling out. We're hoping next year everything goes well. We'll be in 50 or 100 sites is what our goals are. But we really want to get a lot of people using this, because what we're finding is the only question right now is, can it scale out? And so far, as you know, in AR, VR, a lot of stuff happens on the headset, everything happens here, and then the data goes back to the web, right? And we do all the back-end processing on the web for the simulation playback and for the teacher's analytics, the reading, we call a reading report, which is really a teacher report on what we found out of the reading. And then there's also and I can show you some of the screens later point, there's a playback, and that playback is very useful to explain to parents, here's what's going on, there's been so many times where we've been involved in watching what a teacher's doing with a student, and a teacher will say, can you be on a call with us with the parents? We're like, sure, no problem, because they have questions. Of course, there's been so many times where one parent will be like, oh, that's really interesting, it's fascinating. The other parent will be like, yeah, that makes complete sense to me. Like, oh, okay, so it's how those how that data can be used, and then finally we do have tons of data that can be given to a visual specialist. There are 500 visual specialists in the United States, and they specialize in visual specialists. They're visual therapists or visual specialists. So we're providing that data for the teacher, for the student or parent, and for the doctors involved. So yeah, it is scaling out very well. We're very excited about it. And thanks to our corporate sponsors for helping us, Dollar General, Bar Bush Foundation, and Microsoft T-Mobile. They've been great helping us get this far.
Excellent. And that is exciting, and as far as the technology evolving, just like you mentioned, and you're absolutely right, because even in my current scope, when a student does have an assessment, it usually takes a while where they're just there with the reading. And then, of course, they certain measurements. I'm not too familiar with all the exact tests, the way they do them here, but I know it does take some time. And then obviously after that, the specialist has to do the write-up and so the information, it does take a while to come back. So by the time that maybe it does come back, the child still has not received that adequate support that they may need. So hearing how you're able to do this in cutting the time, that makes it so much better. Obviously, you're getting the data, and you mentioned again and again, which I think is a huge plus, is how everything is connected. Teacher, parent, doctor, and so on, and it's real true data that they're getting right off the bat. So going along those lines, and I want to ask you, can you walk us through the process as far as a student comes in, they put on the headset, what is it that they will see, what kind of tests will they get, and then maybe you can show us some data, based on some of your research that you've been doing as you've been rolling the product out. That would be amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and we have videos on this on our website on readingxr.com. But it starts a little bit before the student come in. The teacher has the ability to set up passages, what they want the student to read, right? And what questions they want the student to ask. So the teacher can go in, and we do have a set of passages and questions and answers based on grade level that have been industry standards for a while now. There's a whole body of work when you look at this from the visual process of reading. There's been a tremendous amount of work on this. I'm not sure how deep you've looked at it, but for the past 20, 30 years, this body of work has been building about how the visual process is used in reading. And we're really just building on that. We're leveraging that. We're not doing anything new here, which is kind of interesting. All we're doing is a better way for you actually to deliver it. So the first step is the teacher sets up and says what passages they want the student to read, and then they go and allocate the device, the headset, to that student. The student puts the headset on, and you can see as it's Microsoft HoloLens is what we currently run on. We've tried a lot of other VR platforms, and because the visual process in virtual reality is very close to your face, right? It doesn't work well. So because the HoloLens is a see-through device, I can see through it. It allows us to really work in real space, which is really important. We spent a long time trying to figure that point out, and it has been fascinating to understand how the visual process works with reading. So the student puts on the headset. The teacher then says, start test on the website, and I can share my screen on the website if you want. And then they read a paragraph. First, it does a calibration. So it asks them to calibrate for their eyes. What calibration means is we have to know the IPD, the interpupillary distance between the eyes, right? For eye tracking to work well. So that's it's about 40, we've got it down, thanks to our friends at Microsoft, to about 45 seconds for that to happen. So the kid plays a little gem game. Basically, gems go around and they look at the gems. That's it. We calibrate the eyes off of a gem game. Really simple, but works really effective for everyone. And then they read the paragraph, and that's it for the headset. they're done, right? That's all they have to do for the headset. Then they switch on to the website with a teacher or by themselves, and they answer 10 questions about that passage. Now, here's what we get. So does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm following along.
You got me there. Thank you. Share screen. Got
yes. Here we go.
Entire screen. There we go. So here's can you see my screen okay?
Yeah, there we go.
So here's the screen. And let me just talk about one thing here prior to that. Let me bring up this one slide for myself. Sorry about that. So here's what we see when we do, I mentioned the playback to you. And there's 3 different things in the playback here. And these are undistracted example, which is a normal reader, right? A distracted example, and then a reader with visual issues. And I'm going to explain what that means more as we go, okay? Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
So the data that we're getting is, here's one result, one test that I did on myself. And the data that we get, this is what we call the reading report. This is what a teacher wants to see, okay? And the reading report shows them what the words per minute, most importantly, what's the comprehension rate, right? Did they comprehend the text? If I'm testing someone at the 10th grade level, did they understand and answer the questions at the 10th grade level? And we see a lot of times teachers using it to test at the 5th grade level, then they'll test at the 4th grade level, then they'll test at the 3rd grade or the 6th grade level, because they can test any way they want. It's all about getting the power of the teacher to be able to conduct the test the way they want, quickly and easily, is what we find. So the largest thing is the comprehension. And then here's the data. When you delve into how the visual process works in reading, are you familiar what a fixation is, Hans?
I'm sorry, repeat that one more time. The fixation?
What a fixation is? Fixation? Does that word mean anything to you?
It does. Yeah, it does, but I'm not sure if as far as reading is concerned, I'm not too familiar with it.
So when I'm reading a piece of text and I'm fixating on the word, I'm stopping on that word is what it means. Thank you. You helped me with that, right? Thank you. I appreciate it. And the other thing is regression. Regression means rereading words, right? Make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
So those are the 2 fundamental pieces, along with the reading rate and the comprehension. All those pieces map up to what would be a reading strategy or reading score for that student. And these all map to current reading standards out there that you may be familiar with. So what we're doing is measuring all that in a very quick manner, as I said. In this case, you can see that the grade norm, let me talk about grade norms for a minute. Grade norms have been established over time. There's international standards on grade norms for eye tracking in reading. I know that sounds pretty deep, but it's true. We have a whole international standards of what's a grade norm for 1st through 10th grade, and then what should you see? So in this case, you should see fixations with a normal reader should be less than 100. In my case, it was 81, right? And you can see my left and right eye are slightly different on the regressions. I'm rereading words a little bit, and I'll explain why that is in a minute. And then I have my reading rate, which is 200, is pretty close to grade norm. So those are the ways that the teacher can say, okay, here's the data about the reader. And we also have a bunch of recommendations based on those international standards on these variables. So let's say we have a 2nd grader and it's above grade norm on these fixations, below on regressions. We have some recommendations that the industry has provided to us. And I can give you those links on our website as well. So that's what the data that the teacher needs to get. Now, I mentioned and showed you a screen about the simulation playback. So this is a playback of what happened when I did my reading. Now, you can see that my left and right eye are pretty close, so I don't have a visual problem. But if you notice, and it's probably pretty obvious sitting and having a conversation with me, I'm an ADHD reader. I have ADHD. So I jump all over the place in my reading, right? You can see the pattern of me jumping all over the page, right? That's how my mind works, right?
Wow.
And this just shows how my mind works. Now, my comprehension is still very good, but that's how my mind works, right? That's the neurology of an ADHD reader, right? And you can see with dyslexia readers, they will go in circles through words, right? And I've tested a number of teachers that were previously dyslexic. It was very funny because they go through the circles on the first line and then they correct themselves because they've learned to compensate over time. Adult readers that have dyslexia have learned those strategies for reading. Does that make sense? I said a lot right there.
No. It actually helps me understand, at that level, because like I mentioned, working at the district, I kind of just see everything, from kind of a bird's eye view. But now that you're talking about this, it really helps me connect those conversation pieces that I kind of get to hear many times, and I am just wowed by this and the fact that, right now with the tracking and like you mentioned, very important that I never really thought about the reading. I'm very similar to you where I jump all around the place, but the fact that the HoloLens gets that measurement and gives you that data is wonderful. And then the other thing that you mentioned too was the separation that it would be able to pick up, because of the lines. You've got the red line and the blue line, and then that will definitely give you a different reading and help maybe whoever needs to get that data understand. And then the metrics, so right now you're tying a whole lot of stuff together for me in a fabulous way. And I just want to give a shout out to Tim Cavey, who's joining us through YouTube, and Teachers on Fire. Thank you so much, because he is also amazed by this, what you're sharing.
So here's another example of one of my colleagues. And when you look at this, what do you think, Fonz? This is just left eye and his right eye.
Mm-hmm.
Are they on the same word? Well, let me play a little bit, but do you see how the eye separation really affects our reading, right?
Yes.
Because when you think about it, when we were talking about your mom focalizing as a seamstress, right?
Uh-huh.
We're focalizing at that point, but reading is at a natural point. If my eyes are not on the same word, how can I actually comprehend that word? So this person needs a new prescription, basically. So this is a very easy way for us to see what's going on. And there are a lot of examples on this that I can give you. There's a number of times where we see the left eye on the bottom line and the right eye on the top line. And we're like, well, what is that going on, right? Well, that's called aphoria. That's actually very common, particularly in children. And there's ways to using glasses to correct phorias. That's very common. But to see it very instantly like this is just really easy mainly for parents and teachers and doctors to understand what's going on with that reader.
This is amazing, Ted. Like, right now, just seeing this, just even, with my district, just seeing the potential of how quick you're able to help or assess, first of all, and see what is happening with the reading. And like you mentioned, just here, you're seeing the dots that plays a big role, like you mentioned, in really the reading comprehension. And then obviously, once you get those readings going through the right channels of, okay, what support do we need and how can we help the student in a quicker fashion and almost immediate fashion, because now you can assess the student correctly and then move on from there and help them in that specific way that they need. And I want to say it's almost instantaneous, because like I mentioned, in the traditional sense, pulling the student out, having a meeting with them, and usually about, could be 30 minutes, 45, depending on how long they have to read, and then doing the reading comprehension. And then of course the specialist having to do the results, do the write-up, and then submit it to whomever they need to submit it to at the district level. And then that goes up the chain of command to, the administrator, and then it goes to the teacher, and then it goes to the parent. And that could definitely take a long time. But the fact that you're seeing it right then and there and you're recording it,
right,
it just blows my mind, Ted. This is wonderful. And this is, I can't think of, I don't know, like we definitely need to get these in schools and definitely, help share what you're doing. So I'm thankful that you got to be here and getting to share this, because I'm really excited about how this can definitely help transform or schools, and obviously more just that support to students in that immediate fashion.
Absolutely. So here's the final piece. So we
Mhm.
mentioned that we want to provide data to the teachers, which is the reading report. We want to provide parents and students, which is the playback. And here's the final piece. It's for doctors. Anybody that's a visual therapist looking at a reading issue with a child, they want this detailed data, right? So we collect 90 frames per second per eye of data. So that's a lot of data, right? And I'm not a visual specialist, but this is the data they want. We worked with them over at Massachusetts College of Optometry, and we said, what do you guys need, right? And we came out with what they needed for this. And so that's what we always say. So this is, as you can see, a tremendous amount of data that they can download and they can take with them and analyze in whatever systems they want to do. So that's where really the end result of the product is the way that parents, teachers, and doctors can view the data.
That is wonderful, Ted. That I am just in awe, and just how detailed you can get with this data, and all, like you mentioned, all within about no more than 15 minutes, maybe 20 at the most, depending on setup and whatnot. But I mean,
Right.
in 15 minutes, being able to get that, give the student, a passage, be able to get all that data, record 90 frames per second, eye
Mhm.
movement, you're
Mhm.
seeing the lines, you're able to see, obviously, thank you so much for sharing your example, with the lines going everywhere, and I'm
Yeah.
very familiar with that. Then, of course, you showed your colleague, the way that the dots were slightly separated, not necessarily on the same word, and you mentioned they may need a new prescription. But then also here for the visual doctors or the physician, having that data and just having it right then and there to properly assess, and no guessing involved, no maybe human error or things of that sort. You have that data right there, streamlined. It's just amazing. And I'm in awe because, like I mentioned, for me, it's really about the student, and obviously streamlining processes like these to be able to take care of our students and make sure that they're at level, make sure they're not falling behind, make sure they're getting the support they need, but not only for them, but for the parents too as well, informing them. Because again, in a very big district, sometimes, like I mentioned, going up that chain of command with all of this information does take time. And by the time it gets to the parents, and then maybe the parents don't understand it right away, they may have some trouble. But now, they know exactly what they'll need. They know the physician knows exactly what they need. So you have a really streamlined process here that I am, like I said, in awe, and it's definitely something marvelous and very exciting, and especially because of the technology that you're using. Because oftentimes, like I mentioned in my role, that fear of tech, of like, oh no, the tech, and then tech is all bad, and so on. Sometimes it's just because you just feel it's a little bit of that fear of the unknown. But when you
Yeah.
see the results like this, then it's like, oh, okay. And it just, yeah, it's great. So I'm really excited about this. So Ted, I
One
know you
one thing I
mentioned,
wanted to one thing I want to touch on, Fawn, is the we work with any language, which I think is quite interesting.
Mhm.
So we have a lot of ESL readers that we're working with in some of the sites, and it's been fascinating to me to watch the same patterns in a Spanish and English, and it's just been really amazing. Particularly ESL teachers, my hat goes off to them because they're really hard working on all these issues. So we can do any left or right language. We currently support French, English, German, Italian, and Spanish and Portuguese, but we work with any language. Was that whole area? When you create a product like this, we thought, okay, we created it and it's going to be used this way, right? Man, everybody's used it different ways. Everyone's taken this to a different level. We have a number of people trying different stuff. One was a concussion test. I'm like, what? Yeah. But people are taking the product and doing all kinds of things with it. We're just fascinated by how people are using it.
I love it. I love it. Now, Ted, one thing that you did mention, and I know I've been sharing the website, readingxr.com, but you did mention here that you do have some resources. So, right now, I'm looking at the instructional recommendations for children. And of course, you've got some scales there also as well, or reading rate quartiles. Can you tell us a
Correct.
little bit about what this information is sharing with us, or if a parent may be listening, or and all educators that are parents might be interested or just wanting to get some more information. Can you describe a little bit about what they are at, what they can see and what they can find on your website as well? And
Sure. This
you can
absolutely.
share that if you'd like on the screen.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we said, the reading rate per minute and the reading quartiles. We're not experts in it. We're technical people that do AR, VR. This all came out of international standards of eye tracking with reading. So here's recommendations. We have the links to the source material there too as well. So this was all data that's come up over the past 20, 30 years that the institutes in eye tracking and reading have been working on. So we've just applied all of their metrics to it. I tell you that the testing of this, Fonz, has been 2 years in testing this to make sure we had the right numbers. Number one, we had to make it easy to use. Originally, the first version we had, the student had to touch a pin pad, and that was difficult. And then we had they could say the numbers, and so now we've got it down to where the teacher controls the experience, and that's a lot better for us. So we've learned a tremendous amount. And one of the things we've validated all this data against. The Massachusetts College of Optometry did a study with us last year, and they published it. Barbara Bush Foundation did a study and published it. And they've basically taken our stuff without us and tested it against international standards. So that's where this comes from, and we map to these standards.
That's great. Now, I
It's
wanted
been
to
fascinating how much effort has already gone into this. That's made this possible for us to deliver. Believe it or not,
no,
I don't think we could have
absolutely.
done this 20 years ago. It just wouldn't have worked.
Absolutely. No, and like I said, I applaud you for the work that you're doing because, like I said, oftentimes, the perception, and I go back to the tech and especially, AR, VR and the goggles. It's like, you're gonna hurt your eyes, or this and oh, that's just a gimmick. It really it's just a gimmick. That's what a lot of people think. But now when you see this type of use, and like I mentioned to you earlier, presenting with my colleague and the way that they use it at their technical school, the immersive tech serves so much and can bring so much into the education space, but it's just a matter of, like you said, it's a matter of introducing it. It's a matter to overcoming those barriers, that fear, that accessibility, and so on. But I think that this is something, especially with the reading XR, that I could definitely see, just a wonderful use case within schools, and just really from year to year, I think those tests that normally students would get pulled out can definitely go a lot faster and be more streamlined. Now, you did mention, for the first piece, there was the headset piece, obviously with the readings, but then there's also you mentioned on the website. Is there something
Mhm.
else, the second part on a website that maybe the student would need to do, or can you tell us a little
Yeah,
bit about the steps?
that's just the questions that the student answers.
Okay.
They're yes, no, or I don't know questions the teacher puts in, or
Okay.
and we have the standard ones that came from the international standards. And I do have to do a shout out there because the Stanley Taylor Foundation was a foundation that originally created the Visograph years ago in the 80s, actually. And when we came down to, okay, how do we get these standards? How do we make them all work? We went to the people that wrote it, and a lot of them are retired, and they came out and helped us and said, oh yeah, okay, we're really interested in what you're doing. So yeah, it's been fascinating. And the process, once the student reads, then the 10 questions are on, or any number of questions you want. We have some people doing like 3 paragraphs and 3 questions. Okay. We have some people doing 1 paragraph and 10 questions. So it's however the teacher wants to do it. They do that on the website. So the only thing they use in the headset is for the reading and the reading tracking.
Nice. Wonderful. Well, Ted, I want to ask you now, now that this product has come to fruition, and like you said, you're on various sites now, and as you continue to grow, what is it that you're seeing Reading XR going into as far as, expansion or maybe a vision that you may have? Is there anything that you're working on that, you'd love to share with us? I mean, the more that we get to know, the better, obviously.
Yeah, I think we got these formulas about the words per minute, for example, and it's a lot of it was based on international data from Europe. To be honest with you, if you look at the studies, there are a lot of deep European knowledge that they've worked on that, and there's not a lot of data for eye tracking with reading that's available globally or the United States, right? So really what we really want to do is get, and that's what our friends at Dollar General who have Literacy Foundation, that they've been very supportive of this, is to scale this out. Let's get a lot of data about this. Are second graders, are there eye problems with second graders? What are the eye problems? What are the visual problems? We just don't have a lot, there's not a lot of data around that. And then once you get a lot of data, well, then you can, see whether we have the right algorithms. Is there other recommendations we can do for teachers to help them? And I think a lot of this is going to come from the education community, honestly. Once we get all this data out there and really scale out to, thousands and thousands of sites and lots of data, I think there's a tremendous amount that researchers and educators can learn from this. And again, I view our job as to create the tools to give to educators to do their job, right? So we think there's a lot that can be learned from that we don't have a basis of knowledge around now. A lot of, like I said, was created in Europe, and that took a long time. A lot of eye tracking data, a lot of studies, a lot of universities involved. Now we have an opportunity where we can have a large pool of data that really could be valuable in the education process.
Yeah, absolutely. And that would definitely be very helpful too, as well. Now, I want to ask, kind of in that maybe CTO perspective, many CTOs, a lot of the barriers are always security, privacy, data, and things of that sort. So how do you work right along, a district to ensure the data and safety of data and privacy as well?
Well, this is where the advantage of coming out of healthcare comes from, because in healthcare we had this thing called HIPAA, right? And we live on HIPAA standards for all of our hospitals and all of our whether payers or providers. As I mentioned, most of my business in the past 30 years has been in healthcare. And setting up a HIPAA compliant healthcare compliance system, the way we took it with Reading XR was that original approach. We took everything we were doing in healthcare to secure that health data. And remember, eye tracking data is health data, right? This is your iris you were talking about. So we really needed to secure that data. What we do is each school gets their own database, their own environment. No one connects to each other. It's all within the Microsoft Azure world. So we have a very secure background. And we worked, give kudos to my Microsoft friends again. They've been really helpful of making sure all of our security stuff is in line. And they do audits on us all the time. It's amazing when they give you an alert, you actually really look at it because it's like, wait a minute, you're saying what? It's been really fascinating. They've been a great partner with both on the headset and on the back end side. So I feel very confident about our data security policy. Of course, we do have FERPA and HIPAA compliancy that we're doing.
Excellent. Wonderful. So I'm glad that you answered that, because I know that would probably be on the minds of a lot of educators, or maybe people that may influence purchases. So which brings me to my next question. As far as the headset is concerned, or the program is concerned, is there a price range? Is there availability, either through grants or, process? So can you tell us a little bit about how a district might go about acquiring the Reading XR program with the HoloLens too?
Yeah, we've been trying to work with districts and find corporate matching programs. Like I said, Dollar General has been fabulous, Bush Foundation. And we've seen some state organizations come up too with, as you mentioned, with the tech centers that they're doing. There's been a variety of funding mechanisms that have been happening. There is a process, as everybody knows. You have to apply for your grant. You have to get it lined up. And we've been seeing the grants have been approved relatively. It is relatively low cost in the grant process. It's under $5,000 a year, so it's really a something you can apply for and get grants is what we're seeing. We are seeing people do 3-year grants on that, which I thought was kind of interesting. I didn't realize there was a thing about 3 years, but that seems to be the trend that we're seeing right now.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad that there are opportunities out there, because as you know, even in my role, I know that there might be some districts that are, a little tight and run a little lean. And obviously they care a lot about not only the return on instruction, but the return on investment. So again, the fact that there is some availability through the grant process to be able to do this, that's wonderful. And that's so good to hear. So all of you that are listening out there, don't get discouraged. Obviously you see new tech, you see HoloLens 2, you see all of this and you think, oh, this is going to be a fortune, but always look out for grants. And Ted, I'm wondering, is there any way, or would it be okay for any of our audience members that are watching and listening and maybe in a position where they might be able to influence either purchases or get some more information? Would getting in contact directly with you, would that be the best thing to do?
info@readingxr.com. Absolutely.
Perfect. And we'll make sure we put that in the show notes as well. So you guys can go ahead and make sure you reach out, get as much information that you need. And then that way you can take that back and start writing those grants. As you saw, Ted shared just a wonderful demo, and you can see just the possibilities that this has for your district. And not only that, but just really supporting your students. And again, not only for students, we also have adult learners too as well. So for any companies that are out there or any educators working in the adult space, higher ed, anything, please, make sure that you do reach out. Don't stay in doubt. Reach out to Ted, and again, we'll make sure we put all that info in the show notes. Ted, thank you so much. I really appreciate this chat. And again, thank you again for your flexibility and really just hearing your passion, your knowledge, and really the mission and vision that you have with bringing Reading XR to us here in the education space is wonderful. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing. And I'm sure that all the schools and the sites that are currently using Reading XR also definitely appreciate what you're doing with this product. So thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Well, thank you, Fonz. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and share this time with you. It's been really fun.
Yes, it has. I appreciate it. And again, as a guest of my EdTech Life, you always have an open invite. So anytime if there's anything new happening in the Reading XR world, whether it be a month from now, a week from now, or within a year, you always have an open invite and you can just reach out to me and we can definitely make it happen. So again, I wish you the best. But Ted, before we go, I know that I put in the calendar, I always prep all the guests so I don't kind of, get them blindsided. But there's always 3 questions that I love to end the show with. And question number 1, we might change it up a little bit, but I mean, since you are already coming into the education space, maybe we'll see things through your perspective and your experience. So Ted, question number 1 is, we know that every superhero has a weakness or a pain point. And we know, for example, Superman's weakness was kryptonite. So I want to ask you, Ted, in your experience now coming into the education space, what would you say would be your current kryptonite?
Well, I think it's both a kryptonite and a superpower. And I'll go back to the ADHD. I've written books, I've run multiple companies, I've created products that people use for good, right? So ADHD is not necessarily a bad thing, as you can see with reading all over the place, but you can still learn, you can still comprehend, you can still move forward in life. You have to focus a little bit, you have to work a little harder, but it's not really a kryptonite, but it is a kryptonite in some regards.
Yeah. No, I get it. I can totally see that. So that is a great answer. Appreciate that, Ted. All right. Question number 2, Ted, is if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
I would say reading for life, continuous learning, probably better. One of the things as we age, even, when we stop learning, we die, right? I mean, you do. Your brain dies. You really want to have that continuous learning for life.
Perfect. I love that. Continuous learning. That's a great, it's so simple, very profound, and very deep. And so I really like that a lot. Sometimes I think about it and it's like the less is more. And this is definitely one of those cases too, as well. So I love it. All right, Ted. And then the last question. Now, I know you mentioned you authored books.
Mhm.
However, I'm going to put you on the spot here. And let's
Okay.
say that this may not be something that you're currently working with, but if tomorrow you had to start authoring a book, what would
Mhm.
your book be about?
So my first and only book was called Partner with Microsoft. It was How to Make Money with Microsoft, which was, interesting. I got to study 300 companies and talk to all these people about how they ran their business. And it was just fascinating for me to learn more about what other people do, right? And I still think there's some itch that I want to scratch with that to learn more about how different systems of education or of healthcare work. There's so much you can learn when you have to write about something, right? When you have to write about a subject like that, you have to go do the research. You have to talk to the people, and I think that's the fascinating part of the process of writing a book. Is doing that research. I think that was actually more fun than the editing part. The editing part, I hated it. But, my editor threw out an entire chapter, and I almost broke down. I was like, "What?" But I think something around um, uh, how we learn, how we do things, and going out and looking at how other people are doing it is really fascinating to me.
Excellent. I love it. That's wonderful. Well, Ted, thank you so much. I really appreciate your company here today, just all the wonderful things you shared. And especially that demo was so profound. And just to be able to see that data in real life and just instantly and just streamline everything, you definitely thought this out and found a great solution for many school districts. So again, I definitely encourage all my friends that are out there that are in a position where you're looking for a tool, you're looking for or have some sort of influence, and you saw what you liked, or you liked what you saw, sorry, let's flip that around.
Right.
Please make sure that you reach out to Ted, and we'll definitely make sure all the information is in the show notes so you can get that info. And again, thank you so much. And for our audience members, so those of you that did join us live, thank you, Tim. I know Tim was wild. I know we had a couple of other viewers also that joined us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Appreciate you guys and appreciate all your support. And for all our audience members that are checking this out or listening to this on the replay, please make sure you visit our website at myedtech.life, myedtech.life, where you can check out this amazing episode and the other 252 wonderful episodes with educators, creators, founders, co-founders, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and all kinds of preneurs. I promise you, you will definitely find something to meet your needs that you can take some knowledge nuggets from and sprinkle them onto what you are already doing great. So I really appreciate all of your support. Thank you guys. And as you know, we do what we do for you because we have a passion for education and we have a passion for bringing you amazing guests and amazing conversations that can definitely help us continue to grow. So thank you all for joining us this evening. Please make sure you follow us on all socials at myedtechlife, myedtechlife. And please, again, if you haven't done so yet, jump over to YouTube, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and help us get to our goal of 1,000 subscribers. I appreciate you all. And my friends, don't forget, until next time, stay techie.